This video will cover the basics of creating and configuring a new title block from scratch. Future modules will cover all settings, issue and revision data, and migrating from older title block versions in greater detail, but this module covers just the essentials needed to get you started quickly with a new one. In the Dims and Nodes toolset in most workspaces, you'll find the Title Block Border tool. Normally, you would select a pre-prepared title block from the toolbar, but this time, we're going to go through how to create one from scratch. Click the Title Block Border tool, then double-click on an existing sheet layer. By default, the title block will place itself aligned to the center of the page area and fill to fit it. If you adjust the page size at this point, the border portion of the title block border will adjust to fit. If you don't need or want to include the sheet zones or grid, these can be easily removed by clicking the title block border settings and under sheet zones and grids, either setting the number of zones to 0 or by unchecking show grid. The next most common change in a new title block will be to the margins, which can be edited in the sheet border pane on the left. These default to a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters, but can be set to your desired width or again, zeroed out entirely. If you like, you can increase the size of this dialog by clicking and dragging on one of its edges, which will increase the size of the preview. A quick note on this pane before moving on. Fit to page is why the title block border changed in size when we changed the page size. If you alter this to a specific width and height, the page size will be ignored. Click OK to close this dialog for the moment so that we can take a look at editing the layout from scratch. Double-click the title block and a number of options will appear. Picking Edit Title Block Layout will let us manually add or edit the geometry with the title block itself, which until now has been blank inside the title block border. The Special Editing mode lets us see what the title block will look like when it's done, even while we still edit it. If you didn't have any objects in the title block at all, as we don't here, you'll see a single 2D locus near the bottom right. This can be left alone or removed, but loci will affect alignment relative to the sheet border, as we'll see in a moment. Here, we can add generic objects like rectangles or logo images, basically the framework for the title block we intend to create. You should generally not place symbols here if their contents are expected to interact intelligently. The object should be placed in this editing mode, not in groups and not in symbols. I'll add a few simple rectangles here, and then click OK to explain how the title block aligns inside the border. An important note, if you want your title block to always cover anything underneath, the objects inserted here should have solid fills. If you just want the line work and text, then the fill of any rectangles or other polygonal geometry should be set to none or have its opacity lowered for a translucent effect. As when we drew the objects, everything is aligned to the bottom right. This is the default behavior, but it can be changed. Edit the title block border settings. Then open the title block pane. We see the constrained title block field is set to bottom right. If we alter it to bottom left, the title block moves as expected. Let's edit the layout again to get a better idea of how this constraint is determined, though. We'll take that locus and move it off to the left, far outside the title block border, and exit the editing mode. Then we see that the title block appears offset. This is because the geometry inside the layout is all taken into consideration when the constraint is applied. So if we set this now to align to the bottom right, it would look correct, but setting it to the bottom left still looks incorrect. It's important to remember that any geometry at all will be used to determine the edges of the title block, even a simple locus. This is especially important to keep in mind when upgrading from an older revision of the title block tool, where loci were used for different reasons. We'll remove that loci entirely now, since we now have the geometry we want and Vectorworks can resume aligning it correctly automatically. Now we can add some text. When you add a text object within this Edit Layout mode, you'll see in the Object Info palette that the object type is a text-in title block. This object effectively handles identically to a regular text object, letting you control size, alignment, or have these things controlled by a text style, with one key difference down at the bottom, where we can link the text object to pull its value automatically from the document. We'll add project title and just leave this unlinked, since we always want this to read project title. Any text you always want to remain the same should be left unlinked. Then we'll place a second text box. We'll make the font a little larger. This will be the text box that shows our project's actual title, and will update automatically anywhere we've used it if we ever edit the project title later on. Check link value, then set the dropdown to display project data, project name. The project data prefix on this item indicates whether the field will always report the same value on the entire project, as opposed to one of the other options like the ones prefixed with sheet data, which will change per sheet. You'll notice the field go blank. That's fine. It just means we've not yet defined this value. Exit the editing mode, and then edit the title block border settings again. And then under the Project Data tab, here we can set the desired values, and we'll enter in a name for the project as a whole. While we're here, we'll go ahead and fill out the rest of these commonly used fields, so we don't need to repeatedly come back to this pane as we add them. Clicking OK, we see that the field in our title block has updated, but it appears to be wrapping text too early. We'd like this to fill the entire box, so we'll edit the layout, and then we'll edit the text box. We'll expand it to the right until it meets the edge of the rectangle that we have that title housed in. This is how to directly control where the text within a title block object wraps. This is the default behavior for new text objects within a title block, but if you see yours behaving differently, make sure to check that wrap text is enabled. Otherwise, the text will freely overrun the text box margins and may overlap other title block elements. Adding the other common elements like the project date and the project ID fields is similarly done, using the options with the same names from the link text dropdown. Additionally, we'll add the sheet title and sheet number fields in much the same way. But this time, we can demonstrate a little more how these fields work. Duplicating the sheet layer a number of times, we can see the project data remains the same, but the sheet data will change based on which of the duplicates we're looking at the title block of. Now that these values have been linked and formatted, we never need to think about them again. They'll all update automatically when we change the project or the sheet data. Before we go, however, I want to cover issue and revision text fields, since they have a special function that lets them continuously add items as they're entered, flowing upwards or downwards on the page. I've set up a quick demo with revision number, revision date, and revision note as 3 fields above their field titles. As I edit the title block border, and in the revision data pane add another note, I see the fields in the preview update live to reflect my changes as I would expect. However, if I add a second note, this happens. This was because by default, text linked to the revision or issue fields will flow upwards. If you don't want this to be the case, edit the title block settings once more, and under revision data, set the direction from up sheet to down sheet. The text will then flow in the desired direction, starting at the original text box that you configured in the title block layout. Now that we generally have the title block we want, we'll save the current title block border as a style to use in the same document as well, not just for templates or other documents. To do this, in the Object Info palette, under the Style dropdown, select New Plugin Style from Unstyled Plugin. Name your title block border style, and then click OK to save it. In the Resource Manager, you'll now see a style for the title block saved. This style can be included as a resource in your template file or shared with others as a favorite. The advantage of using a style is that you can use the style on multiple sheets using the same project data and issue and revision data. In future modules, we'll cover more of the settings and capabilities in more detail.